You can begin.
Oh, hi. I'm Kyle. I'm a writer for Geek Truth blog site, and loving all of the Irish folklore trilogy and Cartoon Saloon's work. Thanks.
Sorry, Kyle, could you repeat your question? I think you cut out.
Oh, question. Seems pretty fast. Okay. My question for the panelists would be, the style is very distinctive. I've been to Trinity College in Dublin and seen the Book of Kells. I wonder, is this a consistent style over the three films, or through this series? That would be it.
Maybe I can answer that. Hello. I think the style of the three movies is kind of similar, but very different in a way. I think The Secret of Kells was very inspired by the Book of Kells, but the rest of them, I think that they just kept things that they work for them for their movies, like the graphicness on the shapes for characters and backgrounds and objects and stuff like that. But for this movie, they really wanted to push all their skills and make like a very unique piece, keeping in mind that it would be part of this, but not having that as something to stop doing another thing. So I think the style for this movie was very inspired by the linocut style, medieval style, and for the sketches that we all do when we just go to draw. So I think it was a combination of both, but it's not that they had to keep anything related to the previous movies. I think it's just now on the style of the studio itself.
Great, and our next question comes from Andrew.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining for this conference. My question would go to anyone in the visual styling. What is your position in the importance on keeping alive two-dimensional animation in a world where essentially every other big budget animation studio has deemed it extinct in filmmaking?
Should I grab that one? We are so polite, all of us sitting here, and just well, I think there is something about the hand drawn that it is more free. Like I feel like you can play more with the style and push the style more, even though that we see a lot of 3D animated films looking much more different. The Spider-Verse and but I think there is something unique and very organic about the hand-drawn style. And I also think that if you are working with a budget that is a certain size, I think you can get more with the hand-drawn style. I mean, that's just purely my my personal opinion. I love a bunch of the CG movies, and I think just to have as broad a spectrum as possible is the best. It's very easy to kind of grow tired if everything just looks the same. So no matter the medium, if it has a new twist, I'm all for it.
I can maybe chime in a bit there as well with regard to how the like we did the wolf vision sequences for this, which involved 3D. So there's really a blurring of lines between what is 3D versus what is 2D. Like Spider-Verse keeps getting brought up again and again, but the fact that they were actually drawing on top of the 3D animation as well. Like it's really just about whatever type of story you want to tell, the skills of the people involved, like their own background, and just mechanically how you make it that makes the films at the end of the day. So
Our next question comes from Carl.
Hi. Just stop my video. My question is, most of the humans are drawn with these sharp lines as if sort of roughly stamped on a primitive press. But then by contrast, you have Meb and Mol who rendered with these very sort of rounded strokes and loosely done as if with pencil and watercolor. Can you talk about the decision to use these two different combinations of techniques and why you chose them for those particular characters?
Fede, I think that's a question more for you.
I thought it was for you, but that's I can totally talk about that. So the idea was from the very beginning, from like Tom and Ross were discussing at the beginning of the script, that they wanted, because that's very doable in 2D animation, to make very symbolic, contrasting styles for what was the town and what was the forest, because that's is helping visually what's the central conflict in the movie, that is, between what's considered order and civilization and what's considered the wilderness. So as they did, they just started researching art from the period, and there is a lot of woodcuts that are really interesting for the period, that have indeed, as woodcut has this very dry and edgy and kind of like blocky look to it, and that really naturally was like just got into the style, because it made sense that where Lord Protector, for example, is the representator of practically what is all this idea of order and Puritanism, it would be also the style very rigid, where then to contrast, they just decided to go exactly in the opposite sense and have this very loose style in the forest that would evoke freedom and the absence of boundaries, the possibility of being whatever you want and you dream of. That's exactly what Robin happened to be in the movie, where she starts being blocky and constrained in a cage that society and her father created. And then through the movie, you can see her outline changing, because she's getting just freer and freer thanks to this new knowledge that she has of the outside world.
Great, thank you very much.
Our next question comes from David.
Hi. Well, I want to start by congratulating the team on this movie. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for the piece of art. And my question is that I want you to maybe explain us a little bit how different it is to give life to this 2D animation in comparison to the current CGI and 3D focus that we have in the production of today. How different it is to bring life and to create a scene with this 2D animation.
Well, I can say a little bit that for the process of 2D animation is kind of different to a 3D animation process. For the characters, we don't have the character and we move it. We have to draw it. We have to color it. We have to clean the line, then pass it to Serge and all the comp department to add more stuff. So I think there's a lot of hands working on that, and each of them are putting the stamp on it. So it feels like the artist has to maybe not take more choices or something like that, but it's more reflected in the final piece than when we have a CGI movie where everything is perfectly exactly the same and very homogenic. Here you can clearly see when something goes a little bit off, or when something is flashing a little bit, the line and all that sketchy line that we wanted to bring is boiling all the time on the characters, and the colors are offsetting from the characters, from the backgrounds. So there's so many stuff going on, and you can see in the movie all the artists reflected a little bit more than probably what you could see on a 3D production, I think.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
thank
can
you very
add a little
much.
bit to that question as well in terms of effects. So, for example, in CG movies, you have, particles, or you use the software like Houdini and stuff like that. So, in effects, for fire to move like fire, but still have a graphic style, you kind of have to make the decision of where to simplify the shapes, but still maintain the physics of, for example, the fire. Like the fire was very sharp and angular, so we had to use the knowledge of the actual movement of a fire, but then stylizing it, making it very, very angular, and we were using like scratchy lines as well to add texture to it, which is something that I, as a 2D effects artist, have never done before, in terms of that we are actually animating textures hand drawn, frame by frame. So it's really unique in that sense as well. So yeah, in terms of the difference for effects with 2D and CG, the main thing is that it's all hand drawn, and we still have to apply the same physics that you would do to 3D animation, but make it artistic and make it more sharp aligned and on design as well, and a part of the environment. So that was very interesting. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. That's great.
Maybe I can just say something also based on the technique also in the movie, because there is a lot of different style, but at the same time we need to keep a coherence between the draw, between the texture, between the lines. That we in comp we develop a lot of tools to manage this kind of stuff, to have something more fluid. And also there is some 3D technique used, or it's maybe 2D and half, because we use a 3D camera in a 2D environment, that to have some tricky camera shots like the last one. It's important also to develop tools to make 2D animation movies.
Well, thank you very much for the answers. It's very interesting.
Our next question comes from Jay.
I was just wondering about the character designs, especially with the wolves. It was most noticeable, but a lot of times you can see the line work and the shapes the characters and the animals were built around. Why did you decide to go in that direction, like as opposed to having more clean artwork?
I don't know if I should. I mean, I think it's like everyone knows about it, but it was the Tom and Ross that they just decided, because the idea that they have behind the movies that they make is that they want to embrace what today is. Of course, evolve it thanks to the technology, but they won't want to try to hide the fact that it's 2D. And in the old Disney movies, sometimes you can see the construction line, and it's just telling you, yes, this was hand drawn. A lot of people spend a lot of time, and they liked a bit of that nostalgia effect, and that braveness of just saying, yeah, when this is not 3D, this is just a 2D movie at its core. I know that's the reason why they did it.
I can pop in as well. So like for the sequences I supervised, it was like we built 3D scenes, and we actually had the camera running through the scenes. But at the end of the day, what we wanted to see represented on screen was drawings. So we very much used the 3D as a structure. And it's not a new technique. It's something that's been used for like hundreds of years, really, in terms of tracing over photographs, like camera obscura style stuff. or even in Pinocchio, there's shots of the cage where Stromboli's like captured Pinocchio. That was all a model that they filmed, and then they basically traced over. And in I think 101 Dalmatians as well, they did a painted model of Cruella de Vil's car that they drew lines on so they could help track it in 3D space. So all of the techniques, like animation is just a big melting pot of loads of different things. But at the end of the day, it was more about the mark making on paper than, you know, it being very precise or very clean. Like I was operating with a very, very clean output from Blender in terms of the 3D build. Every step I did afterwards was about mudding it up, adding more like grime and like smudging and grease and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of, it might seem like a backwards mentality, but it's about maybe making people feel something more than just describing something absolutely, like being less precise but more emotional.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Marvin.
Hi everyone, or should I say awoo? I love your film. It's got spectacular animation. It's actually in the running for a lot of awards. I'm very sure of that. I would like to thank you for letting me join you to run with the brains behind Wolfwalkers. Actually, here in London, your film is nominated for this upcoming London Film Critics Circle Awards this coming Sunday. You're nominated for technical achievements for animation. And my question is regarding that. Would you mind to discuss with us the design philosophy of the wolf vision, the visionary wolf vision in this film? Thank you.
I can maybe jump in first. Well, I know initially what we had was we had some concept images produced by like a number of different illustrators. We also, Maria, who you can see on the call here, she was very important in establishing a style and kind of the type of mark making as well. But it basically would have just started off with me messing with graphite on paper as soon as we were in production, and developing not only a sense of the render style, like what type of materials to use, but also the style of the camera, how much depth we needed in the shots. Like, does the camera move really far forward or really far back? Does it look around the corner? All these kind of things. So based on those criteria, we established, oh, well, we needed the camera to move a lot. So that established that we needed to use our 3D baseline for our previs. But after that, it was a lot of back and forth about, okay, how many lines do we have on the screen? How much detail is there on the screen? And I know, like, for Narissa's team as well, that worked with special effects animation on top of Wolf Vision, as well as Tatiana Mate, who did a lot of the kind of cleanup style for characters as well in Wolf Vision. So there was a huge kind of melting pot of, again, different parts that needed all to come together and complement each other. And I had different styles for how the town was being approached versus how the woods were being approached. And that was, again, trying to mirror what was being done with the final line department and the final color department, which was supervised by Eduardo and Stefano. So yeah, there was a lot of different reasons, but it was mostly just because I could see what other people are doing, and I go, okay, well, I can, Wolf Visionify that and then integrate it back into the film. It wasn't a very, it was kind of, when you see it versus knowing exactly like what the ingredients are to make it. So there was about like 9 months of development before I got to a finished shot, but yeah, it was complicated.
I think it was also part of like they really wanted to represent what a wolf would really see or feel. when it's in just like running in the forest. I think they wanted to make it different from the rest of the movie, in that the movie is very flat in general. All the backgrounds are pretty flat, and they wanted to have like more like a three-dimensional space for the wolves, because they can hear stuff that are behind, and they can see things that are super far and things like this. So they wanted to create something a little bit more atmospheric for the wolves. And it was also like a lot of experiments with different colors for the different scents. We were studying the spectrum of the colors, and we were giving like the lower colors to the town people, and then the more vibrant reds and very passionate colors for the wild in the forest. So there was a lot of research, and I know that Tom and Ross, they were looking for reference to and see if they could see some pictures of what a wolf can see. but yeah, at the end it was just this idea of having something completely different that we cannot experience really as humans.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Donnie.
Hi there. I guess this is kind of a general question. I wanted to know what the biggest challenge in designing these characters was.
I guess I will start. I mean, there were plenty of challenges. Some of them were very specific to the characters. I would say that the first one that came from the very beginning is that even if it is a cartoon saloon style movie, they wanted to evolve the style a bit. So they started playing with more three-dimensional elements in the design. But the design is still graphic. So there wasn't really a manual of how graphic or how two-dimensional to go. So we just spent quite some time trying a bit more of 3D, trying a bit more of graphic flatness. And then, we would go over with Tom and be like, no, that's too three-dimensional. And then, no, that's too flat. And it was, the problem is that this kind of thing becomes more of a gut feeling kind of a design process. Then until you hit it, you don't know where is the point. Then if you talk more about specific characters, like Lord Protector took many pages of tests, and the reason was just that it wasn't completely sure from the script which kind of character it was yet. Or the Girls of Wolves took a lot of time because they were just tough to translate as wolves. I know that also the others have probably quite some stories.
I was gonna say in terms of color for the characters, we were also like having some problems at the very beginning, because they are so flat and they have a very large areas of color that they were not integrating well with the very watercolory backgrounds, with a lot of blending watercolors, bleeding stuff. So I think that was also a challenge that the comp team really excelled at, because at the end we managed to make them integrate very well with the backgrounds, adding textures, adding textures to the line, to the color, to everything. So maybe Serge want to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, sure. Yeah, there is a lot of techniques done for this, because there is 2 or 3 different styles during the movie that we need to keep something similar, but also a little different. That when we make a treatment on the line, for example, on the town, it was different than we have on the forest, because on the forest everything was more rough. That we have the rough line, the rough effect on the line, and on the tone we had some texture to have the impression that it's a rough but really straight rough, that to keep a coherence between the different style, at the same time to have something different. And it was the same for the watercolor. In the past, I worked also on Ernest Celestine on the watercolor style, and we use this kind of technique. For example, on the forest, for the shadow was really like blob blob of watercolor. On the tone, it was more straight. And the effect we had on the different style was different. And in some parts also we have Bill, for example, with Robin transforming, that we have straight line with Bill and Robin line like rough, that we need to mix together and have a difference, but it's important to keep also a coherence on the full image. That it was major tricky stuff to manage.
Our next question comes from Cherry.
Hi, everyone. I love the film. I thought it was gorgeous, like all the other ones you've done. I'm very curious about how the overall look of Maul changed from the beginning when you all were sort of drafting the images to how she and the other characters ended up in the film that we saw. And this is to everyone.
Sorry, I just don't know if I didn't understand. You asked just for Maul or for all the characters?
Maul's my favorite, so she's my first one that I'm asking about. But all the characters, because I've seen some photo images of when you guys were, I assume, drafting the characters. And I know that usually there's a morphing from the very beginning when you all begin the design of characters to how it's going to end up on the screen, especially since you used multiple animation artists, design artistry.
Yeah, maybe Federico or Svend can talk about that.
Yes. But I think it's a big question. So I think we can all, like, it's more than one person that can reply to this, because it's pretty happens is that you start pretty wild and you're trying to find, the character, and character kind of goes everywhere, at the beginning, because you try many different stuff. And then with time, two things happen. The first thing is that you need to narrow down who the character is. And the second thing is that making the character animatable comes towards you and changes your character, because the beautiful design you did don't work anymore if you need to turn them around. So like someone really talented like Sandra Anderson that works in the saloon comes and says, okay, this thing is not turnable, now we make it turnable. Then after that, the fact is that it's 2D. So what happens is that you have a lot of different animators that work on it, and everyone is likely, different beautiful artist, and there are not enough model sheet because you cannot produce every possible pose the character are gonna take. So the character starts morphing a bit, sometimes for the best and sometimes for the worst. So usually you go back in and you just decide which kind of creative changes you want to keep and which one you need to bring back in the rails. If you ask about specific beginning, you can see the first trailer. She's practically the same. The only thing we did was to play a bit with the proportion, because I remember she felt a bit too baby-like. The head was a bit too big, so we just brought her back to be a bit more, stern, mature, beautiful woman like. And unfortunately, she doesn't have a lot of space to use her design in the movie, but we are still very fond of her design. Maria, maybe it's like, or also Sven, or
yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit about, like, it was happening with Maul, but with all characters as well, that it was very nice for the animation department to kind of have in the same building the character designers and the model sheet makers, because then throughout the rough animation part, we could, if something was tricky to get to work with the design in the three-dimensional animation, we could always ask people like Federico or Sandra to help out with the drawing with an angle of the character, because there's only so many angles you can draw before animation starts. And that was just great that we could kind of pull on those guys and make sure that we got the appealing look, you know, like it has to be appealing. And sometimes we would try and stick as much as possible to the model sheets that were prepared. But sometimes we would tweak a little bit to get the emotion to work exactly right. And I like that there was that freedom there. Yeah.
Actually, if I can add just a tiny thing, because there's not many people know it in animation that see it, and it happens in 3D, but it happens much more in 2D. The fact is that when you make a movie, the only thing that matters is whatever it's in the shot. What you did before, it's a guide, but it doesn't really matter, because the thing doesn't work in the shot, you're not gonna put it there. So sometime when you turn around in a 3D scene and from a 3D movie, you will see that the character, it's actually posed in an impossible way, but it looks good on camera from the angle you're taking it. And it happens the same with 2D, because, and much more actually, because the fact is that you see your shot and you're like, okay, what looks best? And you kind of adjust the design to still feel the same, but to work the best for the shot. So, I mean, that's one of the beauty of animation, to take those freedom.
Perfect. Our next question comes from Jennie.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about the wolves. I mean, wolves have a really long history in human art and indeed the prehistory of art. And I think, you know, they've been used many, many times as the bad guys in any number of cartoons. I wondered how you distinguished yours, how you went about observing particularly their movement, because obviously they still have to be scary, even though they're characters we end up sympathizing with.
Should I?
Yeah, you should start then.
Okay. Well, you know, when we started exploring with the movement of the wolves, and it was a tricky thing to get right, because as you're saying, you know, we needed to make them scary, and at the same time we needed them to feel like they were, you know, the good guys of the film. And I think it makes sense, you know, because nature is beautiful, it's gorgeous, but it's also very dangerous. So I think there was that balance between the wolves seeming threatening, and then they would go in another sequence and become like little wolf, like little dog puppies. And I think there was a lot of thought going into how we could have that balance work. So you really are terrified, you know, or at least you believe the characters are terrified for them. And I think it was good in the beginning of the film to have that sequence where you establish that, you know, that the wolves are scary, you know, like it makes sense why the townspeople want to do what they want, but there's more to the story than just, you know, this scary face.
I think the fact that they change the eyes every time that they go from good to bad, it also helps a lot. I feel like every time that they have the glowing eyes, they immediately look way more scary. And then as soon as they come back to their like normal eyes, they look like super goofy and very nice and playful and everything. So I think that helped a lot to build that contrast with the characters.
Great. Our next question comes from LeAnne.
Hello. I think the movie is enchanting, and I really love the whole girl power part of things. But you do notice there is a bit of a difference, of course, between what happens in the forest and what happens in the town. And I'm wondering, are the illustrators different? Do you separate the team from who works in the town and who does the artwork in the forest? And then what's the communication process like when you go to integrate the two?
I think when we start doing scene illustration, we had people that was naturally more skilled to do the woodcut style and the style for the town, and people that naturally was more sketchy and it was working better for the forest. So from the very beginning, we kind of have a little bit of separation on people who was good with the town and people who was good with the forest, at least for the backgrounds. And as we kept going and the department starting to go like final line and backgrounds, I know that there was always people that would be more comfortable drawing the forest and doing flowers and trees and flowy compositions, and then people that would feel more comfortable doing the town. But at some point, everyone was doing a little bit of everything. There was this girl Clara that she was really good with the town, and she mainly did town through all the movie. She did just maybe 2 or 3 forest backgrounds, but she was very good and very fast doing the town. So we tried to keep her doing that. And there was other people like Emily or Laura, and that they were very good doing just like sketchy lines. So we tried to make it the most efficient for the production. But yeah, at some point I think everyone was doing everything, and when we start color backgrounds, everyone the team was super small, so everyone was doing everything. So I think at least for backgrounds, that was a little bit the mix.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Ben.
Hey there. So as the third movie in Cartoon Salon's trilogy of Irish folklore, what were some of the lessons learned from previous 2 films that you took to heart in creating Wolfwalkers in terms of the animation process and how well certain techniques may have worked or not worked?
Well, I mean, I was my first job on a feature was on Song of the Sea. So I've worked on 2 of the films. I didn't work on Kells, and I think you can kind of see from Kells over Song of the Sea to Wolfwalkers that things are getting more volume. You know, like the animation gets a little bit richer, more volumetric, and I think it was an intentional choice to kind of play a little bit more, you know, with different themes as well. I kind of see Wolfwalkers a little bit more as an action movie, maybe in some ways than the first 2. Yeah, I'm not sure. What about, does any of you other guys have anything?
I think Tom and Ross always say that, for example, in this one they added a lot of crowds on the shots, and for them that was a big step, because on the previous movies you would have like a maximum of, I don't know, 5 characters per shot, and in this one we have the town sequence where you have like a lot of characters, so it was also a chance for them to start, well, not to start, but to use more other programs and try to solve those problems. So I think that was something that it was an improvement from previous movies for them.
Maybe I can just talk also. I was involved in the 3 movies, and from the beginning to the last project, Tom wants to have something more simple, and finally it was more complicated. And it's strange because on Kells and also on Song, there is a 3D technique used on this first 2 movies, but here only the World Vision was made in 3D. The CGI, there is no CGI for the rest of the movie, and that the project will be more difficult. And maybe for me, Wolfwalkers was really more difficult because there is a lot of shots. There is 1,800 shots, and it's much more than the previous project. That it's you know, it's very an action movie, and there is a lot of different shots and very short. And all this shot needs to be prepared and put in place. It's not a copy. It's why this project was more difficult for me.
And our last question for this session comes from Stephen.
Hi, everyone. Congrats on the film. It's really amazing. It's like an art museum that's come to life with the vivid colors, the textures, the hand-drawn. It's just, really beautiful and really quite magical. It's like, it seems like a cliche to say, but it really is. In every frame, no matter where you pause it, it's a work of art. You could hang it up on a wall. And I've said that before, and I stand by that because it's true. It's just incredible. So congratulations on that. At what point did you realize that you were involved with something so special and kind of connected? What about it are you most proud of?
Well, I can start super quick. For me, it's my first project. So just the fact that I get to work on Cartoon Saloon on such an amazing movie for me was already super overwhelming. And so I think from the very first day that I watched the animatic and I watched the sequence of Running with the Wolves, I was just in tears. I was just crying. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe like all this story is so beautiful. I cannot believe I'm part of this. And as the time passed and I see all the beautiful artwork that people was doing, all the team working together, it's just so magical to be part of it, of that, more than the movie itself. I think it was just the feeling of working with so many talented artists, which makes this movie super special for me.
I can chime in a small bit as well. I'm used to working on very small independent films, like short films, where you have very short turnaround for things and not really much of a budget. Not to say that like the Wolfwalkers budget can compare to like budgets in the US or anything like that, but generally when I was making things, I go, okay, well, we could do this way, or we could go this way that's much more expensive and time intensive. And fair play to Tom and Ross, they normally like were more tempted by what would take longer and would be more elaborate and look like more exciting as well, I guess. So that was an unusual thing for me to be in the position of like working just 18 months on one like 3-minute sequence. That was a real kind of going, okay, are you sure?
Personally, for me, the most fun part about Wolfwalkers and being a part of the project, as you said, every frame you can print it out and put it on the wall. And that's something that you really noticed with the feedback you got from the directors as well. And like the little things that they noticed that just really pushed the composition of things, even for effects as well, like the little things that needed to be added and should be in there. Like even for us doing the waterfall, you have the foam and that kind of stuff and this mist that was like hand drawn, and I scratched in the texture on every single frame, so the texture is constantly moving, and it's just to give that little extra, texture on the effects, or the little extra detail on the magic with the spores or that kind of stuff. And really, it's a really fun project to work on. I've never worked on anything like this for effects, 2D effects. I worked on quite a few projects, and it's one of the ones that has challenged me the most creatively, and try to find creative innovation ways to animate the designs and be respectful of the designs that Maria was putting through for effects, and integrating them with the background and the character animation without hiding the beautiful animation or the beautiful backgrounds, but adding to it and remaining true to the line work and the style and effects. So it was just truly fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think very early on you realized that you are part of something special just because of how much the previous project that the Saloon has made means to you. But you're really scared as well, because you know that the more you proceed, the higher up you get, and the more you can fall, and you just hope that people will like the film. And when I finally saw the film in the cinema, I had no idea what worked and what didn't. I was just so much thinking about, oh yeah, this shot we did this and there was that thing, and so up until the day where the first kind of reviews came out, I literally had no idea. So to see the success that it has brought, it makes me feel very proud. And I think, you know, what I liked the most from the whole production is just the mood that is at the studio. And it really doesn't feel like an office. You're not going into an office building. You're going into a clubhouse or something and sitting with your weird friends and painting and doing, you know, all kinds of things, and you're getting paid for it, and it's really weird and great. But yeah, it's just you know, it's much more than the movie for me. So and the movie is great, but there's so much behind that just means so much. So yeah.
Yeah, it's totally true. The team on Cartoon Saloon is really amazing. I would like to name Mark Mullery, was the first assistant who made an amazing job following the storyboard to the end. He passed everything technically. It was great. Or Helge also on the ink and paint, because the ink and paint, it's really complicated to do, and she did a great job. There is 100 of people who work on this project, and it was really great to. Each project is different, and each project is, you know, a feeling of making something special all the time, especially into the animation, because we really need to make special arts piece of art that we need to develop techniques, and it's really amazing to do that, and lovely that.
Yeah, I remember like when I watched the Secret of Kells, something, oh, that's really nice, and then started studying animation, and then Song of the Sea happened when I was still in school, and I was like, damn, I cannot try for this because I'm still stuck in school. And I was like, I'm gonna work on the next one, but I didn't really believe it would happen, and then it happened. And I was like, I mean, is the dream job the first job to land. And I just get good gut feeling from Wolfwalkers, and I remember that the best thing was really the sense of a family endeavor more than just like a studio making a movie, because we started in the beginning, we were 15 people in a room, just drawing a lot on paper and trying stuff out and having long lunches with a lot of wine, and then and that spirit never left. That spirit of camaraderie never left until the very last moment. That's what I think mattered the most to me.